Hello, Capricorn. Welcome to your June 2023 astrological forecast. For those of you who are new, my name is Jane. So this is going to be an interesting month. We have the sun well on its way in through Gemini, which is great. I think this can really help our work ethic, and it's being accompanied by a Jupiter in the fifth house, which can be really creative. So maybe you're feeling that spark to create really coming back to life, that spark to get back to it, to get back to work, to do what you need to do, to go get healthy, right? With that sixth house, whatever it is you need to do. There's a lot of what I call self-mastery that comes in through this sixth house. And while there can be a lot of tasks that need to be done and a lot of habitual and day-to-day types of stuff, I think that is where self-mastery takes place, right? Self-mastery takes place in the very, very small decisions that you make on a consistent basis all day long. And being I want to say being the best, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're putting all this pressure on yourself, but you're really trying to live up to your own expectations here with the sun in the sixth. The sun is going to be coming through for the rest of June, and then on the 21st, the solstice, it's going to be coming into Cancer and activate that seventh house. Now, there does seem to be a lot going on relationship-wise for Capricorn. We'll talk about that alongside Venus, okay? Seventh house and eighth house, so when the sun comes into the seventh, just so you know, Mercury is also moving very, very quickly. So by the end of the month, the sun and Mercury will both be in Cancer, okay, in the seventh house. So seventh house is a house of relationships and partnerships. And then we have Venus, which is one of the planets associated with relationships and partnerships, and also sexuality as well, and sensuality. She's coming into the eighth house, which is really, when it comes to relationships of any kind, romantic, absolutely on the docket, but could also be professional. Anyone with whom you have some type of obligation or contract. And Venus comes into this eighth house, and she is preparing for a retrograde. Now, just to be clear, she does not retrograde this month. That's happening next month, and we'll talk all about it. But this month, she's just preparing. And she enters what's called her pre-shadow phase. And so we're going to see a lot of the themes of the Venus retrograde start to emerge. My personal opinion, the pre-shadow phase is always way more intense. And then retrograde is like medium intense. And then the post-shadow is like the least intense. It kind of downgrades one level at a time there. So we're going to feel a lot of the intensity of this Venus retrograde in June. Not to mention, this is also accompanied by Mars as well. So Mars being in Leo is a powerful transit. He's a fiery planet. It's in a fire masculine sign. So Mars is really ramping up, and he's really supercharged. For you guys, eighth house, this might be a little bit agitated, okay? So if something goes wrong in your relationships, or if there's some kind of a miscommunication, or if someone else isn't living up to their expectations or not fulfilling promises, they're not doing what they said they were gonna do, this might get really, really hot and feisty for Capricorn, something that I think you would be more than willing to fight back on and stand up on and communicate maybe even a little bit harshly with. I don't know that this is going to be a month where Capricorn tries to be especially nice. Now, I'm not saying you're not a nice person. We all know you're nice. But sometimes you have to be a little bit more upfront and honest and curt and just put it out there so that people understand. Because if people are screwing up, or if people are doing things they shouldn't be doing, and it affects you financially, it affects you personally, it affects your lives, your children's, your family, like you're gonna stand up and say something about it. And because that eighth house is such a transformative house, this is kind of where our ego goes to die, our identity goes to die, and then we re-emerge a different person once we leave eighth house energy. This house right here is one of the reasons why change is so constant, right? Because this exists. And this is going to be a period of change for Capricorn. Change, I don't know how specifically it's going to happen for you, But I think there's going to be a moment when you sit back and you say, well, we can't keep going like this. Like, we can't keep doing this again, or we can't keep having this conversation, or we can never do that again, you know, that type of thing. So there are going to be a lot of revisions, a lot of reevaluations going on. But as Capricorn is one of the more, well, maybe I'm generalizing here, but for those who are here watching anyway, tends to be a little bit more evolved and willing to take on that responsibility. So as much as someone else might be doing what they do and it's impacting you, you are also saying, okay, well, maybe I'm not responsible for that, but there are other things that I am responsible for that may have contributed to this whole scenario. So let me fix what I need to fix. They will fix what they need to fix. And then together we can move forward differently. Okay, I do think as we make our way through July, you are going to be approaching things differently than you have been. Okay, and again, that 6th house, house of self-mastery, the sun is here. What can you do better? How can you personally improve? And how can other people, you know, how can other people be held accountable for the things that they are, for the problems that they are creating as well? I don't know that Capricorn is in a position here where they're enjoying relying on other people. I'm not saying you can't love your partners and your spouses and all that, and you can lean on them for that. But if there is a problem, I think it might bother Capricorn that they can't just fix it all themselves, that they actually are dependent on someone else, that you are co-creating with someone else. It's not like you can't do it all on your own. And that might be something that Capricorn has to contend with a little bit. But I think if you do make your way through and you communicate well, and you know, especially as Mercury comes in through the 6th house can be really analytical, and it likes to go down and dig deep and find the root causes of problems. Same thing with the 8th. So it gets deep. I think it's going to get deep for Capricorn. It's going to get deep with everyone involved with Capricorn too. And maybe there are going to be some just real conversations on Capricorn's plate here. But it's for the sake of making it better, obviously. It's not just because you want to like delve into the problems for the sake of the problem, right? You want to find a solution to the problem. Especially with this Jupiter here conjunct the North Node. I think a lot of people are feeling like they want to get out of a situation. Like, how do I get out? How do I evolve? How do I take myself up to the next level? How do I achieve some kind of a new destiny for myself, if you will? And of course, Jupiter in the 5th house, highly creative house. I think you're willing to try and do an experiment with a lot of things. Another thing that's happening on the 11th, just so you know, Mercury comes into Gemini on the 11th. And then also on the 11th, Pluto dips back into Capricorn. Now, one of the things that I've been saying consistently about this transit is it's like the past is somehow going to weasel its way back up. Now, it may not happen in June specifically. We've got several months ahead of us with Pluto still in Capricorn. And this is this first time, one of 2, that he is going to be retrograding back in Capricorn. He's going to do it again next year for the final time, really the final time in our lifetime. So this is a really slow closeout. And I tried to make a point of that when I did all my big Pluto stuff back in March. But it's a really slow closeout to the Pluto in Capricorn transit. So things coming up from the past, problems resurfacing, conversations resurfacing, issues, people, whatever, coming up for the sake of not creating havoc in your life, but just to show you how different you are. Just to show you how far you've come, how much you've grown, how much you've learned. The way I'm kind of describing this to everyone is, it's like if you were madly in love with someone and the relationship didn't work out and you loved them for so long that it kind of ruined other relationships for you. And then years later, you finally move on and get them out of your system. And then they come back and you're completely not attracted at all. It feels like a door is closing. And on one hand, there's something worth rejoicing about that. And then on the other hand, it might also feel a little bit sad. Like a little bit sad that it had to go this way, or sad that, you know, like, especially if you see someone that just kind of gives you the ick and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't even like, why, like, ugh, that's not what I was thinking it was going to be at all. It's not what I was expecting. You know, it's like, it's sad, you know, so there might be something going on there with that as well. It does not mean that all your exes are going to return. I just want to put that out there. It may have nothing to do with romance whatsoever. It may have to do with something, you know, just you have with yourself. Obviously, Capricorn is your own sign, so it may have to do with just some aspect of yourself that is no longer, it's just no longer there. And if you try to get it back, if you try to revive it, it's kind of like trying to get a car with a dead battery to start. It's just like it's not going to be able to rev up, really. Okay, so that's on the 11th. On the 17th, we have Saturn retrograding. It's in Pisces. And then, well, before I get to the other stuff. So Saturn in the 3rd, the retrograde, I think is really going to slow down the movement. We have some contradiction going on. While Mercury in Gemini is like go, 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 even all the Leo energy is also very go, go, go. Saturn in Pisces in the 3rd is definitely a big slowdown. So on one hand, with your personal development and your relationships, there's going to be a lot of movement and focus and investment there. But any other things, like especially if you're traveling, or if you're trying to learn new things, or if you're back to school, or if you're trying to work on collaborations with people, or if there's some type of creative thing that you're working on, Saturn retrograde can bring a bit of a lull to everything. Usually when Saturn retrogrades, it internalizes, and we can experience a lot of internal blocks where, generally speaking, there is nothing in front of you. There is no reason why you can't do it except what's going on up here in your own mind. Capricorn is, you know, Saturn in the 3rd. It's your time to really learn about how your mind works in a new kind of way. And usually when we come into a Saturn in the 3rd, we think one thing, and then by the time Saturn leaves the 3rd, our minds are completely transformed. So you're kind of in the beginning stages of that transformation. So those mental blocks, those mental or the intellectual blocks that you might be experiencing might be a little bit heftier now, since this is his first retrograde in this sign, than it will be next year, even in 2025. Okay, so it just may feel a little bit more frustrating or stagnant, but it doesn't mean you can't still get things done. I mean, there's a lot around here supporting productivity, you know. Okay, so let's talk also about when the sun comes into Cancer on the 21st, we have the solstice. Mercury is going to be coming into Cancer on the 26th. So 5 days later, Mercury joins. And then on the 30th, we have a Neptune retrograde. And Neptune retrograde mixed with Cancer can really pull the energy back. This absolutely can be an emotional time. There is no questions about it. I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to be crying all day, but what I'm saying is that you're going to have to deal with certain emotions that come up for you. You're going to have to find some degree of compassion and mercy and love in your heart. And sometimes with a Neptune retrograde, it can be hard to access those rose-colored glasses sometimes. Because when we look at a situation or we look out in the world, we think, how is it possible? And there can be a lot of doubt. And sometimes that doubt can bring up a lot of that emotion. So the goal here is just to give yourself that time to feel what you need to feel. There is no need to suppress any emotion. If you need to do it in private, fine. But like, you need to feel it and get it out of your system. Because I think there's a lot of not real things, especially with the mental blocks of the Saturn retrograde. There's a lot of not real, not well-founded, not based things going on that you might be using as an excuse to hold you back. And if you make final decisions during that time, you might really be shooting yourself in the foot. This is going to be a week, end of June, where you just have to say, I'm just feeling stuff and I'm not going to make a decision with this. I'm not going to finalize anything. I'm not going to sign the paperwork. I'm not going to send over the money. I'm just going to wait. I mean, obviously, unless it's something like normal, like please pay your rent is what I'm saying. But it's just not a good time to make life-changing decisions. Later on in July will be fine because the planets will be a little bit more settled then. It's just that inertia of a Saturn and a Neptune retrograde, both in that third house, both in Pisces, plus Pluto coming back into your sign, plus Venus entering her pre-shadow phase. There's just a lot going on that week. So it's best to just kind of roll with it. And then once you start really hearing what your heart is saying as the sun continues on through Cancer, you'll feel a lot better about decisions that you're making throughout July. Okay? All right, so I'm going to keep you guys there. You guys know I love you. Have an amazing month, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.